Okay, welcome and thank you very much for joining us tonight. We are joined by local author Caroline Kautsire. She is originally from Malawi, Africa, and she is an English literature and writing professor at Bunker Hill Community College and Bay State College in Boston. She has published poetry and flash fiction that explores themes such as searching for identity, struggling with intimacy, and learning to love. Today, she is here to discuss her latest book, her debut book, What Kind of Girl? Caroline, thank you very much for joining us. Before I turn it over, I do want to let you know that we are going to be taking questions at the end, so please feel free to put them in the chat throughout, but Caroline will be answering all questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here today and for me to share my story and also about my book, What Kind of Girl? I am a professor at Bunker Hill Community College and Bay State College. And it's been very difficult not to be going to school and just keeping everything remote. But we've adapted, so things are slowly changing. So it's an honor to be here to give this talk today. I have prepared some slides that I would like to go with this talk today, so bear with me. I will have a lot of visual aids today. So let me just share that with you very quickly. All right. Okay, so What Kind of Girl? That is the cover of my book. And yes, that is me with a nice shaved head. I don't remember how old I was, but it's a cover that I'm very proud of because it kind of captures the essence of what the book is about. It is a coming of age story that takes place in Malawi, Africa, which is where I'm from. And I struggled so much to try to fit into cultural norms, and I was very, very different from other girls. And I'll talk a lot about that, which kind of sparks the question, what kind of girl are you? You can kind of finish it off at the end with anything that you want to include. It's not your stereotypical story about Africa. There's a lot of stereotypes about Africa. Maybe you think it's a book about war or poverty. Yes, there is a little bit about poverty in it, but this is what I can describe almost as, think of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but then it's an African family, something like that. And it's a story about my family and all the struggles that I went through. So I hope that in sharing those struggles, you will learn something and maybe even turn inward and think about your coming of age story. Because that's what this book is. It is a conversation starter. And I'm going to be discussing that. So where am I from? I'm from Malawi, Africa, and it is in the southeast of Africa. You can see it right down there. I think when the movie Black Panther came out, it was spotlighted as Wakanda, which is not a real place, but it was spotlighted by Malawi, which is very funny. But yes, that is Malawi, and that is our flag at the top right corner that you see with the rising sun. And I lived in Malawi for 17 years of my life. And it's not a very big place. It's known as one of the poorest countries in the world. But I think we're pulling through, we're doing pretty well. And it's a place that I hold dearly to my heart. And everything that I do, wherever I go, I keep Malawi very close to my heart. I try to tell people about it so that it's not just this place on a map, but it becomes real for you. And that's what I try to do in this book, to make it a real place for people. So there's that. My last name, Kautsire. Yes, phonetically, it doesn't sound like what it looks like. So the African phonetics are a little bit different. It's pronounced Kautsire, not Kautsire. So don't be fooled by the phonetics there. This is my family. And you'll see that at the very center I'm sitting at the very center, and my parents are on the left side. My mom is kind of like trying to disappear in the corner there. And I'm sitting next to my dad. And on the right side, you'll see my two brothers, Charles and Trevor. And I'm the only girl, and I am the last born as well. So, you know, I'm the spoiled one, people say. And then you'll see that on the left-hand side, there's another picture of myself and my dad. That photo was actually taken in Boston. It was my brother's wedding. And that's me and my father. And on the right-hand side, you will see myself and my mom. And this time, she's not trying to disappear. But I'm going to be talking a lot about body language, actually. And I was thinking about that when I was putting the photos together. I was like, wow, my mom is trying to make herself small and hide in plain sight. And on the other photo, which was taken in Boston, she's actually a little more confident and, you know, able to bring herself out. So that's very interesting. But my parents are a very crucial part in the book, and their stories are kind of like a background for how I've understood myself, or they've been the super ego, or like, if we're to think about the id, ego, and the super ego, there's the super ego in my mind. Everything that I do, I kind of have their voices within me. When I think about culture and the things that they've taught me, it's always kind of right there with me in the present, in the choices that I'm making. So they're very interesting, I would say, even characters in my book, even though it's not fiction. And my two brothers as well function the same way. Our relationship was very interesting. And I think I tried to copy a lot of what they did when they were younger. And I was looking for role models when I was growing up. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that too, where it all began for me in terms of finding a role model. And I covered this in the book as well. Okay, so where did I go to high school? This is Kamuzu Academy. Very beautiful school right by the Ornamental Lake. That lake actually has monitor lizards in it. We were safe. There were gates that surrounded it, so they were kind of like in a secure area. We were not exposed to them directly, but it would be nice for me to be walking to class and seeing a monitor lizard swimming in the water. But it's beautiful. And Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda, when he was building it, was thinking of Harvard. And so if you walk through those halls, it will remind you of Harvard. And there's a chapter in my book titled Kamuzu Academy. And a lot of the action that happens is I'm talking about this particular school. On the right-hand side, you will see myself. And I am in my school uniform. I'm looking very tired, probably because it was a sports day. And that's the kind of uniform that we wear during special occasions. So at Kamuzu Academy, it was kind of like a British style prep school, I would say. And so I spent a lot of my time at Kamuzu Academy. I wasn't in the kitchen, which is where a lot of girls were expected to be in the domestic area, helping mom cook, washing dishes, washing clothes, cleaning the house. Yes, I did a version of that, but it was cleaning my room. It was teaching myself how to take care of myself when I was away from my parents, because Kamuzu Academy is a boarding school. You want to know how old I was when I started high school? 9 years old. Yes, I was very young. I was 9 years old, and I was very excited. In the book, I share the excitement that I had to go to Kamuzu Academy. And in a way, I was this child that was very eager to grow up. I thought adulting, as people say, was a very exciting thing. And at Kamuzu Academy, I think it taught me how to take care of myself, that by the time I moved to America, I knew a little bit about how to take care of myself. I didn't worry so much. Yes, the homesickness was there, but it wasn't too much of a problem because I was already assigned to a boarding school. If there's one thing that I think a lot of people talk about is, you know, was it fair that my parents sent me to this boarding school at such a very young age, 9 years old? Well, there were these entrance examinations that every student had to take. I took that exam because my teacher had told my parents that I was smart enough to start high school at age 9. And when I took the exam, I passed. But I won't lie, there were certain things that I struggled with at Kamuzu Academy, and I'll talk about some of those struggles as I continue with my slides. When I moved to America, I went to Quincy College for my undergraduate. I was studying liberal arts. Now, when I moved here, I wanted to become an actress. And I wanted to be a film actress, to be even more specific. So my brother said, well, you know, you can't just go straight to an acting school. We can't afford that. You need to go to a different school where you can do a liberal arts program and just have a general feel at what America is like. You know, don't go rushing into acting, because to them, acting was not a serious thing that you pursue academically. So I said, okay, fine, Quincy College it is. And I went to Quincy College, and that's the place where I actually started working as a writing tutor. And it's when I started to get the feel of what it's like to work in America. My GPA was very good, so I was able to do that. And it was a very good time. So when I graduated from Quincy College, I went to UMass Boston next. And I'll say at UMass Boston is where the activist version of Caroline kind of came out. I was introduced to a women's studies class. And there, I think I started to understand myself, the kind of girl I am. My book is titled, What Kind of Girl? Well, if I am to say, when did you start to fully comprehend what it meant to be a girl, and that you have a voice, and that you have this identity that you can nurture and shape and mold however you want it to be? It was at UMass Boston. I was 18 years old. And in this class, I started to realize that I can use my voice. I wasn't a writer yet. I was just figuring out what it was like to be female, and some of the discourses that, you know, people were talking about at that time. And then I said, you know what, let's give it a try. Let's go to grad school. I applied to different colleges, and I got into Brown University. So that's where I did my master's in English literature. And Brown University was so much fun as well. I continued my activist work there, mostly directing shows and performing in shows as a form of activism, but also writing my thesis on Shakespeare. Shakespeare is very, very important in my life, because there is a chapter in the book, and it's titled Shakespeare Taught Me How to Write. And believe it or not, it is William Shakespeare that has helped me with my writing. And I'll explain that when I get to my writing slide. So where does it all end in terms of education-wise? Emerson College. I went back to Emerson after teaching for a while, and that's where I learned how to write creatively. So these are my schools: Quincy College, UMass Boston, Brown University, and Emerson College. So if anybody ever asks about my resume and where I've gone to school, this is it. Okay, so another thing you need to know about me, and also if you're diving into my book, you'll learn that American television is something I grew up with a lot. I ate everything up that I saw on television. And where did my role models come from? I told you about role models. Well, it was African-American actresses that I saw on TV: Halle Berry, Whoopi Goldberg, Angela Bassett, all very inspirational women who I think I loved how outgoing they were. I loved the clothes they were wearing. I loved that they could speak their minds. And it was very different from girls in Malawi. And I'll explain that difference very soon. The one thing that I didn't know, though, was that African-American women in America had their own struggles too. You know, they were fighting their own battles as well. But for me, I just thought emulating what American women did was something that gave me power, something that, you know, made me share my voice more so than if I was adapting to the coyness, the shyness that African women were expected to be like when I was in Malawi. So like I said, writing. I haven't always been a wonderful writer. As a matter of fact, I was terrible at it, terrible. I couldn't write to save my life. And I think one of the reasons is that I was too young to understand grammar. At some point, it eventually comes to you and you figure out how to write. But I think my mind wasn't that mature enough in order for me to find the right ways to construct my sentences. However, I loved literature. That was the thing. In the classrooms, anything that had to do with Shakespeare, like I said, or any other forms of literature, and we were learning about characters' lives, I felt like it helped me understand people better. Psychology is something I loved very much. In fact, at Quincy College, I majored in it immediately because I loved to understand why people do what they do, why they think the way they think. These were attractive things to me, and I wanted to write well about them. So what happened was, in channeling my passion for literature, my writing became better. I was working on writing. But if you really want to know the truth, in high school, in order for me to come to America to transfer my credits, I passed with a C grade. I wasn't good at writing. So how does somebody who is not good at English composition become an English professor, become an author, right? Kind of like an interesting phenomenon there. There's some irony to my life, and I'll be sharing more about that as well through my book. So when I was writing What Kind of Girl, you may be wondering, so when did you actually become a writer? What happened? Well, it starts at age 27. I'm feeling very lost about my life. I'm an English professor. Everybody thinks I have it made because I'm a young professor. But I was feeling so empty in America, and I didn't know what it was that was missing until I started to look at social media. And all my friends were in tune with their African side. I would see them wearing like African garb, especially like traditional wear. And I would say, why don't I like that? Why don't I have that in my life? So I said, you know, maybe it's time for me to visit home. So bought a plane ticket, went back to Malawi. And I tell you, the moment I set foot on that land and I was around the people and the culture, suddenly I wanted to write. I wanted to write about my experiences. I used to play with the kids in the villages, and I would buy them food, and I would just chat with them and look at their lifestyle. And it was so different from mine. I would think about the things I was complaining about in America, and it just changed my life. I had to write it down. So I started writing on social media every single time I would post something, and people said, you really should write a book. You really should write a book. And I said, I'm not a good writer. I've never been a good writer. What do you mean? And they said, this is good content. Share it. Well, coincidentally, I had enrolled at Emerson College because I was thinking about this writing thing a little bit. And I said, let me develop my craft. So in the process of developing my writing craft, I started writing What Kind of Girl? And it took me about a year to work on it. And so I would go to the classrooms and I would be sitting with all these people who know how to write. Maybe some were in my position, but I didn't really know. I didn't know anybody at the time. And but I knew like the second, third years, they were very good at writing. And I said, how will I ever come up with great writing like this? And I tried and I tried. So what you're seeing, What Kind of Girl, was me trying to write. And that's what I produced in the end, until Austin Macaulay Publishers took me on and they said, yes, this is something that is publishable. And so we decided to publish What Kind of Girl. So that was roughly the story, you know, feeling lost, finding my voice in Malawi, having to go back home to find my voice, and then bettering my craft at Emerson College. And finally putting together What Kind of Girl in about a year's time. You may wonder who are some of the writers who have influenced my writing. Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou. I was definitely reading them at the time when I was writing the book. And I just love the way their sentences are so fresh and crisp, and they're constantly doing something to your imagination. It's like doing backflip with words. Every sentence is doing something wonderful, imaginatively creative. And I wanted to write that way. So I would read Toni Morrison's Sula, Maya Angelou's work, and I would look at their craft and try to find a place somewhere with my own writing to come up with that same freshness, to write crisp sentences like they did. And then Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, a Nigerian author, and Trevor Noah, South African author, are two of my favorites as well. And Chimamanda Adichie, it's specifically the way she uses metaphors and similes. Her figurative language is just so sharp that when she talks about Nigeria, you feel like you are in Nigeria. And I wanted to do that same thing to bring Malawi to people. And so what are some of the things that allow, people to feel the senses? You use the senses. And Chimamanda Adichie kind of has that powerful writing there when it comes to representational language. Trevor Noah, it has to do with the very end when I was wrapping up my book. And I said, I don't know if it's good enough. I don't know if I even have a personality. When somebody is reading, will they be able to sense my personality? And when I read Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime, I said, oh my goodness, this guy, I can hear what he sounds like with his stand-up comedy. I can hear the same thing with the way I'm reading his book. And so I decided that I would also unleash my voice, to be honest, to be raw, to be passionate about my writing. And so he kind of helped me come out with that freshness of my voice so that people can sense my personality as they're reading. I give the reader my interiority as a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, which can be a tough thing. You have to go back and think about what you were thinking at that time, and not let older Caroline to be intrusive with that younger Caroline's voice, which can be very tricky. But I did it. And so these 4 authors are very crucial to influencing my writing. Okay, so diving into the book itself, you'll notice that in the description, it says that growing up is confusing for Caroline. It was very confusing and it was very awkward. There's a lot of awkwardness in growing up. I don't know about you, but for me, definitely. And so what are some of the things that I want to touch on today? What did I struggle with? Well, we have identity itself being the umbrella topic for this. Expectations and traditions for young girls in Malawi. Dress code, which is very key to how I carried myself. Body language itself. Gender issues. Cooking. Right? Class and religion. So these are some of the topics that I would like to cover today in sharing my journey. Okay, so you'll notice that there's little Caroline at the center again. And there's 2 different versions of me. We've got the Caroline that has the shaved head, and we've got the Caroline that looks pretty much like what I look like right now. That's probably a couple of days ago. But I just wanted everybody to know that identity is something that is very malleable. And the little Caroline you're seeing at the center did not have a voice. What people saw was a very confident girl, probably didn't know my vulnerabilities at all. And so the older Caroline has decided that now that I'm becoming comfortable in my own skin, I can give voice to the Caroline that didn't have one when she was younger. And that voice can help a lot of other young men and women out there who might not be able to really describe what their identity is. They might be struggling to understand what their identity is. Today you'll see in these pictures, I'm able to shave my hair. I couldn't shave my head like that when I was much younger. Too many stereotypes floating in my head that having short, natural hair meant I was ugly, right? Having long hair meant I was beautiful, right? But for me, I embrace everything. I can have short hair, I can have long hair, and you'll see that I'm still going to be the same person. My behavior can shift, depending on the particular day, how I feel. It's something that is malleable, and you can be anyone, you can be anything that you want, and you don't have to be afraid. And so that's something that this book has allowed me to do. It's allowed me to come to terms with a lot of things that I kept locked up when I was young, to come to terms with the struggles, the pain from childhood, whether it is from bullying, whether it is from something someone said that can change your whole perception of who you are, because that happens at a very young age. Somebody says one thing and your whole life changes because somebody said, I don't know, you have a big head, and your whole life changes because of that one comment. So I've come to terms with a lot of things, and the book is in a way that kind of release for me. Okay, so another thing you'll notice in this particular picture, I wish you guys were right in front of me so that I could ask you questions and you can say, oh, this is what I noticed. But one thing is for sure, my hands, my arms, I'm constantly trying to make myself big. I'm constantly trying to take up space. I'm constantly, you know, trying to say something. My mouth is agape in two of the pictures, right? You will notice that. And in Malawi, girls were not supposed to behave this way. You're not supposed to take up space. You're supposed to make yourself small. You're supposed to disappear in plain sight. You're not supposed to speak your mind. Otherwise, that's something that was associated with the boys, right? You would be considered rude, disrespectful, right? What kind of girl was I? I wasn't feeling like I was fitting in because I couldn't take up space. Right. And these kind of traditions are things that need to be rethought. And I think a lot of women today are doing much better than what happened in the 90s when I was growing up in Malawi. Right. In terms of traditions, I talk about one or two of them in my book. And I think for young girls, you can be sent to so many different female grooming schools. I was sent to church. I was raised Catholic, and they sent me to church, and they would teach us how to behave like a girl. Or if you were at your coming of age ceremony, they would teach you how to behave like a girl. But I noticed a common denominator. It was always about pleasing the man. It was always about preparing you to get married. And the narrative was always the same. It's like one size fits all. And I didn't fit. So I said, no, I'm not going to that tradition. Want to know why? Well, because I'm also going to Kamuzu Academy. Remember my high school with the ornamental lake with teeming monitor lizards? That high school. That had that British prep school style. I was learning something completely different. So now think about it. I've got the British culture in my mind, American culture in my mind. Now they're telling me I need to learn African traditions in my mind. It was confusing. There was no way that I would be able to kind of figure it out at a very young age, especially because I'm 9 years old, I'm 10 years old, 11 years old, a time where somebody should really explain things to me. And I was off at boarding school, so my parents couldn't do that for me. I had to learn through academia. Okay, the next one is dress code. I struggled with dress code. What you're seeing here is fabric, African fabric, and we call it a chitenge. And the chitenge is normally a wrap that you wrap around your waist. And women usually use it when they're cleaning the house, walking around, doing all sorts of things. And when I was growing up, for me, it was just for older ladies. And I never associated it with young ladies. But things started to change. A lot of young women and men started to embrace these African patterns that today we now wear them. And as you can see, the photo on the right is actually me in Boston. That's not taken in Africa. My parents actually brought the stuff from Africa so that I would not forget my culture. What you're seeing on my head, the crown there, is something that we wear in what we call the Ngoni culture, the Ngoni tribe. I am from the Ngoni tribe, and you will see that a lot of women, if they're getting married or having some kind of bridal shower, they can wear this traditional stuff as a way to embrace their tribe. And that's my tribe, the Ngoni culture. I hated chitenges growing up. Now, I hated the colorfulness. I hated the patterns. I could not appreciate that beauty. And I couldn't see how creative Africans were with it. And one of the reasons was because my body was so tiny. So when I wore these things, I just looked awkward. It's like, what is she trying to do? You know, somebody please help that little girl with that chitenji, somebody would say. So I just ended up hating it because of my body. It was my body that convinced me that I hated that particular fabric. But eventually I grew up to love it, as you can see. And nowadays I look for every opportunity to have that African fabric with me because it reminds me of home. Dress code number 2, you will notice another common denominator in each of these photos is that I'm wearing a tie. I'm also wearing collared shirts and blazers. Well, this was because, remember Kamuzu Academy? Did I mention this? Kamuzu Academy is like Harry Potter's Hogwarts, but without the magic. That's what it was like. We didn't practice magic, but it's exactly like Harry Potter's school in terms of like how we carried on. So it wasn't that I was trying to dress like a man. I was trying to dress the way we were dressed in uniform at my school. It became a comfort thing for me, and it became part of my style. And today I still dress like this. Yes, in Malawi, I was told ties are for men. And I would want to impress my father because I knew, remember I told you that my parents are very kind of like prominent figures in my story. Well, he would always tell my brothers, you know, it's very nice to wear a nice collared shirt and a tie and a jacket. So when I was little, I wanted to impress my father with a nice collared shirt and a tie and a jacket. But I knew my father would reprimand me and say, that's for boys. You know, what are you doing? So again, I had to hide that I actually liked these things because I would be associated with boys, and it was a no-no for a girl to ever look like a boy. You know, I wanted to be pretty like everybody else. I wanted to be accepted like everybody else. So I would hide. And that's another thing about my book, a lot of hiding and pretending. If you've ever lived a life where you have to pretend so much, read this book and see how I pretended. Because it's definitely something that I struggled with when I was young. And the next slide, you see body language. This is kind of coupled with what I just talked about. On the left-hand side, you'll see that I'm a little more effeminate. On the right-hand side, I'm a little more solid. My torso's up. I'm looking very, very confident. I can sit in both styles now. Prior to this, the body language you're seeing with me in a dress was impossible for me. I could not make myself look fragile like that. I could not make myself look soft like that. I just looked awkward, and it was because, again, of my body language. So believe it or not, in the book, what I try to talk about is how I struggled to carry myself in a feminine way. Not because there was anything wrong with me, it's just because I had a tiny tomboy-like body. And a lot of my friends were older, they were more developed. And as a matter of fact, I'm about to read an excerpt from my book, a short excerpt, so you can see how I struggled so much because body language was something I struggled with, even on stage. Even on stage, you will notice I like to play characters, male characters, not because I want to be a boy, no. It's because I can be free in the clothing. I can move around, I can take up space. So on the right-hand side, you'll see that I'm in blue. That's when I was playing Mercutio in Romeo and Juliet. And it was such a fun part. I could do anything, I was so free. On the left-hand side, in the green, that's me playing Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. And as you can see, it's a mischievous part. I think they were doing some typecasting somewhere. A mischievous character that can run around stage and do whatever they want. All things that girls in Malawi were not supposed to do. Thus, my constant, in the book, my constant reference to, I want to go to America so that I can actually be whomever I want to be. I want to go to America so I can spread my wings and be whomever I want to be. That's where it kind of comes from. Sorry, I went back. And of course, gender issues became a huge problem. I got bullied a lot by young boys because, as you can see on the left-hand side, there's a picture of me playing basketball that's actually here in Boston, Massachusetts. I haven't lost my athleticism. I'm very athletic and I like to work out. It's a very important thing for me. On the right-hand side in high school, you see me at Kamuzu Academy. I'm running without shoes. And it was easier for me to run barefoot because I could, something about gripping the ground better. And people said, that's weird. Where are your sneakers? I said, no, I want to run barefoot. I'm faster that way. So when I did these things, the boys would make fun of me because I wasn't doing something ladylike again. So the teasing was there. And there was also a lot of violence to go along with that, because if you were just not measuring up, it wasn't a good look. It wasn't a good thing. And I got in trouble a lot. And I got in many fights because of gender issues like that. Okay, so now I'm going to take the time to read a short excerpt from my book titled Late Bloomer. Remember how I told you that I did a lot of pretending? Well, I was pretending to shave my legs because I didn't grow hair in my legs. And if you were shaving, it meant that you were growing well, that your body was actually functioning well. And it just took about, it's actually a hereditary thing for me in my family. My father doesn't grow hair in his legs, and I think I got the same thing. Now, people shave so they don't have hair. So I was shaving so that maybe I could provoke my hair to start growing on my legs, so that shaving could be my new normal. It was weird. So I read an excerpt about this. And the second thing is, I also have a weird interaction with a boy named Kevin about another insecurity of mine. What's that insecurity? Well, you'll find out. So please bear with me while I read this short excerpt. I wasn't the kind of girl who stuffed socks in a bra to pretend I had breasts, but I was the kind of girl who faked shaving my legs as though I had hair. Each Saturday morning, my friends would gather their shaving sticks, soaps and creams and towels and shave by the cement sinks outside our dorm rooms where we washed laundry with our bare hands. Some carried pails of water and sat by the lawn outside their bedrooms. I watched them roll up their jeans, wet and soak their legs. Sometimes I couldn't see the hair on their legs at all. They gently shaved off their hairs, looking closely at their skin, letting the shaving stick slide smoothly up their legs as if they were sculpting art. They did this while chatting, recounting the hottest gossip, usually about relationships, budding flings, singling out who had sex with whom in the squash courts, and lots of laughing. Everyone looked so happy shaving. I felt left out. Sometimes someone said something to me as I watched enviously on the side. "Oh, Carol, you have no hair on your legs." "Oh, shame, too bad," they would say. I hated showing my legs, and I tried to cover them as often as I could. I wore jeans all the time, and I got into the habit of covering them with a blanket or a kitenge if I was sitting on a chair or my bed. I had very smooth legs, a smoothness that my friends were striving for. But since I wasn't shaving, I never cared for the fact that my legs were already smooth. I was more worried that I was still a child in my friends' eyes. What triggered my crazy notion to pretend to shave the hair on my legs was not hair related. There was talk about not having my period, as well as my lack of breasts and a big backside. The boys in my class often teased girls about being on the rag. Once, my friend Kevin, who was 2 years older than me, told me he could sense when a girl was on her period by feeling her wrists. Something about the warmth of her hand, he said. We were seated in the chairs in chemistry class, waiting for our teacher to begin his lecture, when Kevin slid his arms around mine on the wooden desk. "Do you bleed?" Kevin asked, feeling my wrist with his fingers. I pulled my hand away. "Stop it," I whispered, smiling, but embarrassed. "You don't look like you bleed," he concluded. His eyes looked as if his assessment of me had dulled his day. He turned his body to face the front of the class as if it was a waste of time to talk to a girl who hadn't gotten her period yet. I ignored him. But my heart raced at the fact that he could tell I didn't menstruate just by looking at me. Kevin was a very observant boy and often shared his philosophies about life, love, and other existential subjects. I panicked that his wisdom might have enabled him to see my body through my clothes. After that exchange, I felt naked around boys. When I interacted with them, I tightened my body and fidgeted a lot, mostly hunching my shoulders, placing books or anything I could find in front of me to hide in plain sight. I also observed carefully how they looked at me, tracing where their eyes would land on my body, wondering if they could see my nakedness, my hairless body with a flat chest, no butt, wondering if I appalled them. That's just a section. Yeah, I faked shaving so that I would be one of the girls who was growing up, and Kevin could sense when a girl was on her period by feeling her wrists somehow. And I just felt like I was being seen or something like that. And I wanted to hide. So I started to make myself small. I started to hunch myself so that boys wouldn't see my body. But the weird thing is, I also wanted them to see my body because I wanted to be appealing. So there was that struggle there, that tug of war between wanting to be seen and not wanting to be seen at the same time. That's a chapter called Late Bloomer. It's very wonderful. If you get a chance, please definitely get this book. I think you'll have fun with it. All right, so what about the cooking? I have like 3 more topics. One of them is cooking. Never liked cooking. We have our food called nsima. Nsima is like this, it's almost like Italian polenta. And when you cook it, you cook it until it gets into this dough-like state. And then you eat it with ndio. You eat it with chicken stew or vegetables or beef stew, whatever stew that you want. But cooking it was very difficult for me. And very often I would run away from this chore. And so it's another reason why people said, what kind of girl are you running away from cooking? What kind of girl doesn't know how to cut a whole chicken? Questions like that. When they asked those questions, it made me feel less of a girl. In terms of class, I played a lot with the kids in the villages, mostly because my parents had hired guards, house servants that would help us around, and garden boys, and their children would always play with me. And that's when I started to understand the difference between me being a middle upper class person and lower class families. And I wanted to be like them because there was something jovial about them when we played. And that difference always fascinated me. And I wanted us to be alike somehow. And I didn't quite understand class very well, when I was young. And I just wanted to create that sameness when I was with them. And if I had stuff to share, I was always a very giving child. The other thing is that our house got broken into in Malawi. About 50 or so thieves robbed our house. And I started to understand a lot about poverty and how it can really drive people to steal from the rich, right? And I despised the fact that I lived in a big house because of it. I wanted to live in a safe place. I didn't want to live in a place where there was danger. So a little bit about class there. I do touch on this in the book, but again, through this robbery, but also my relationship with the kids that I used to play with at the servants' quarters. And the last topic is religion, which is also something that recurs in the book. I was raised Catholic and then became Pentecostal. And I question in the book, who is God the entire time? And since a very young age, thinking that I was growing up with superheroes, God was just a superhero for me when I'm like 6 years old and whatnot. But throughout the book, you'll see that I try to understand who God is. And even though I was a very mischievous child, there's a lot of risk taking that I took. I still grappled with this question and wanted a relationship, some kind of relationship with God, something that I still try to describe and define and understand until today. Yes, so back to this slide, like I said, it's about identity. And if somebody asks, so what kind of girl are you? You know, I am more than one kind of girl, more than one kind of woman. Like I said, I gave a voice to that little child that you're seeing at the center. Today, I can rock this hair if I want to, or I can shave it all off if I want to. I can carry myself in so many different kinds of body stances that I want to without feeling insecure, because I've just come to terms with all of this, because I have digested it. I know what people are talking about in society, and that I want to be comfortable in my own skin and to be the best version of who I am, and be in touch with my inner self. And in a way, they always say we must all kind of look back at the inner child that we are, and whatever we needed when we were a child, we can always bring that back as adults. We can reclaim things. We can now speak out. We can now be free to explore different things that we were afraid to explore when we were much younger. So how has the media coverage been? Wonderful, actually. WCVB Chronicle featured me recently. And as a matter of fact, this coming Friday, they're also going to be featuring me again in their Ladies of Literature segment. And they're going to be talking about my current work right now. CBS Boston featured me, the Boston Globe featured me, the Patriot Ledger featured me, and a lot of newspapers in Malawi. The sad part is that in Malawi, they haven't gotten my book yet because of shipping issues. They're a big problem. So what I decided to do is I created a GoFundMe page, and I've been raising funds so that I can get copies of the book and send it to Malawi so that they can actually have a story about a Malawian and learn this, have it on their curriculums, and so the media coverage has been very well. I've been very fortunate, and I hope it will continue this way. There've been a lot of supportive people. People send me pictures. My friends are so kind. They send me pictures of themselves with the book, smiling, and I tell you, days when I want to give up, days when things are not going well, I look at these smiling faces with my book and it makes me so happy. So the people who know who I am said that they didn't realize that the confident person they knew had all these vulnerabilities. So it's nice that they're getting to see me as a whole picture, not just an assumption, right, of who they think I might be. And then the people who don't know me are saying, wow, you're so brave. You put your business out there and told the whole world. And I said, yes, I did. I'm coming to terms with it. I'm becoming more comfortable with who I am so I can share. Maybe I can help other people who are struggling with identity. And that's what it's all about, that positive impact. So the girl who couldn't write, I don't know if you can see where it says how it started, but that's my certificate where I got a C grade when I graduated high school, with just a C grade in English. How is it going? Well, that girl who couldn't write published a book. And I think that's enough said, mic drop, right? And I'm very fortunate that this has happened for me. And the journey continues. What's next? Well, there's a sequel coming up. It's titled Some Kind of Girl. And it's going to be coming out in 2022. This one is going to be set in America, because the first book, What Kind of Girl, is set in Malawi. And then I take off to America. And so if you want to find out what happens to that girl in America, my second book is going to be coming up. And I just signed the contract a couple of days ago. So I'm very excited about this. If you would like to purchase my book, you can purchase it on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and the Austin Macaulay website. The Austin Macaulay website is my publisher's website directly, and all this information is online. So I hope that you will get a chance to read my book and enjoy the story. Thank you. All right, let me stop the share and come to this screen. Hi, Carrie, you are muted.
Oh, sorry.
Hi.
All right. So we are going to take some questions right now. If you haven't already posted your question, you can do so in the chats on whatever platform you're watching. I've been keeping track of any questions that came in, and so we have a few already. So the first question that we were asked was by someone on our Facebook. Steve wanted to know, what was it like being away from your family at such a young age? Did you often find yourself lonely and missing them?
Yes, absolutely. I think because I went to boarding school at age 9, I was very excited about becoming an adult, and I think I was too young to even understand things like a relationship between a child and their parent, like to fully understand what other children have. It's only when I would come back from, I think when I was like around 13, when I was a teenager, I started to understand that I had been away from my mother, who I was very close with, and it started to hurt. And to know that I didn't have that relationship anymore. I didn't know my father very well either. We spoke about academia, we spoke about how to make it in life, you know, just all the serious work related stuff. But that father-daughter relationship wasn't there. We've only started to build this bond, especially now that this book is out. We are closer now more than ever, because it's like, we're realizing that, oh my God, that's who you were. You were paying attention at 6 years old when I said that. So it was very, very lonely. I'm very jealous of everybody that has experienced big families and even having the grandmother experience, the grandfather experience. I've never had that because I lost my grandparents before I could even really make sense of the world. I was a baby. And so, yes, Steve, very, very lonely. And just not, you know, feeling like as much as I was raised to treasure family and to think of everything being family oriented, you would almost think I'm a hypocrite because I was away from them a lot, and I missed out there. And it's something that, yes, I mourn all the time.
Were you able to get home and see them often throughout the school year, or is it just only on like holiday breaks?
It was only on holiday breaks. That was it. And then right after boarding school in high school, they were sending me away to America. So it never worked out that I would stay home. Maybe between ages 15 and 16, when I was just turning 16 years old, I did stay home for a year and I got to know them a little bit. But like I said, too many frustrations about not fitting in. I just wanted out. I didn't really get a chance to get to know them. And instead, I wanted to just come to America. But when you look at it in retrospect, I was also missing out on that father-daughter, mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah, I can imagine that's hard, especially in your most formative years growing up.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth asked, she said she has a friend who deals with accents. Sometimes she speaks in English. And then sometimes with her Nigerian accent, other times she's able to successfully hide the accent. Have you had any experience with your accent, and how has that maybe affected some of your interactions or work?
Right. So there are times.
Oh, sorry. She wanted me to clarify. It's not a friend. It was in Americana. It's a novel. Sorry.
Yes. Chimamanda Adichie's novel. Yes. So it's one of those things where there are moments where I read rooms, where my surroundings, and I say, okay, is this a situation where I want to blend in? If I do, especially in America, I can sound extremely American. You won't even trace any accent whatsoever. But if I also want to have an African accent, I can have an African accent, and it's usually deeper. And I can bring it out and you can notice it. So yes, I turn it on and off. That's the fun of being diaspora. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Identity is so much fun if people just realize that they're free to create, reinvent themselves as often as possible. So Yes, I pick and choose scenarios. It depends on who I'm talking to. When I'm talking to my parents, my family, or Africans, I think my accent comes out more. When I'm talking to other Americans, I think I also sound very American. People actually mistake me for African American most of the time.
Steve also wanted to know about some of your influences. He said he loved the authors that you had highlighted. But what is your favorite Toni Morrison book?
Toni Morrison, oh my God, Sula, definitely Sula, because Sula reminds me of myself in a way, because she didn't fit into a society. She was so, her choices obviously were things that you have to question. But because she didn't fit into society, people were so used to pointing a finger at her and blaming her for everything, that in a way, society actually became better because Sula existed, you know, in a way. So maybe in Malawi, I was a version of Sula because I was very extroverted and outgoing. Maybe that's why that is my favorite one, because I know what it's like to be in a place where people are just saying, what's wrong with this girl? Why is she so different? And that's why I really enjoy that book.
Outside of your family, what is the one thing you miss the most about Malawi? Like the first thing you have to do when you get back, when you go home to visit?
Oh man, what do I miss the most about Malawi? I think more than anything, I miss the food. The food is so good. I mean, when I tell you, we know we talk organic food and whatnot here. When you taste the food in Malawi, oh my God, the smell, the taste, everything is just rich. And I can't wait to eat that food and, you know, feel very, very content. That even chicken, like there's something about it, the smell, the taste is so different. And I grew up with that. The nsima that I'm talking about, we have a kind of cornmeal here. We call it maserepa, but it's not the same. Maserepa is like, it's like a wannabe cornmeal to me. You know, it's pushing cornmeal, but it hasn't arrived. So I can't wait to get to the food more than anything. I daydream about it all the time.
Oh, I'm sure. I have friends who are from Kenya, and when we have events, they always make mandazi.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
mandasi, so good in Nigeria, and I think they call it puff puff.
Yes, they do. Yes.
Yeah.
It's delicious. I think one of the greatest things about culture is food, because it's such a community driven thing. You know, everybody
Right.
can appreciate good food.
Right. Everybody can appreciate good food. Yes. And also aside from like the food, like I said, the clothing, I feel like I'm making up for lost time with the clothing, because I used to hate it so much when I was younger. Now I love it. I want the latest African print, the latest dresses that are being made out there. So I can't wait for that too. So the food and the clothing. I have an aunt who makes wonderful clothing there. Her name is Luchi K. And absolutely talented. I mean, when you look at African patterns, and the creativity that has gone into it, I can't believe I missed out on that. You know, but like I said, I'm making up for all that now.
And it's interesting because it's so much more precise African clothing, right? Everybody is fitted for their pieces. It's not like, you know, just these generic sizes that, you know, could be half a size in or half a size out. You get fitted for your clothes and measured.
Yeah, medium, large, and whatnot. Yeah, and I think that's what makes them so beautiful, because it's been fitted to somebody's body type, and so it's going to complement that body, and they're going to look good in it. You know, as opposed to, well, they said it was large, but it didn't turn out that way. You know, so absolutely, I agree. It can look so good.
Okay, so my next question that I have for you, do you feel like you have made peace with your identity and your cultural heritage and have figured out what kind of girl you are, or is this always going to be a work in progress?
Yes, I think it's always going to be a work in progress. Yes, I am comfortable right now. I do have slip-ups sometimes where I find myself, getting stuck in old ways of thinking. Unlearning is a very difficult thing to do. It's tougher than learning something for the first time, because once an idea is planted in your head, it's very hard to erase that idea. So sometimes I catch myself going, why am I thinking this way? I'm over this, and now I'm like feeling self-conscious today. Why am I feeling self-conscious in this scenario? Oh, it's the people that are here. So I'm constantly reconfiguring myself in terms of identity. Like I said, I read my rooms, I figure out the people who are around me and what's going on. And from that, I then pick and choose, even with things like accents and whatnot. So yeah, definitely a work in progress. It never ends. It's just an ongoing thing.
And then just two more questions. The book, is there an audio version of it? I was asked.
Yes, there is no audio version of it yet. But it's something that I have asked Austin Macaulay to do for me. And I think when the second book comes out, I'll do an audio version of What Kind of Girl. A lot of people have asked me for that. So it seems like it's something I should invest in.
And then lastly, do you have any recommendations with particularly young girls who are also struggling with their own identity within their culture?
More than anything, I think young people need role models. Young people need to see themselves out there, somebody who is like them, somebody who they can aspire to be like. I think it's important for even parents to have a relationship with their children where they can find role models for them, expose them to people who, have that identity empowerment thing going on. Because I think more than anything, to empower yourself is very, very important. And those resources and the people who we surround ourselves with, it's very, very important, I think, to try to find those figures and follow that path. So things like success and what other people have done, they leave clues, right? So we follow those paths, we follow what they're doing. So I would just recommend that, think about who your role models are. What do they have that you would like to emulate, that you would like to kind of rub off on you, and put yourself out there, because things like comfort zones, you hear people say you don't grow from that, right? So you have to step outside. I always say this all the time, to step outside of comfort zones and do different things. If you have talents at young age, those talents are not meant for you only. They're meant to be shared with other people. So share your talents. Let people know what you can do. It's important to learn how to use your voice from a very young age. Parents, teach your kids how to use their voices, even in your relationship within the family. Do your children have a voice in the family? Are they able to say how they feel and what's going on and how they've processed things and whatnot? Because all these steps are key to what's going to shape and mold them as they're growing up, right? So there's some key things that I've said there, regarding role models, stepping outside of comfort zones, the relationships we have with our guardians. All these things are going to play a part in identity empowerment.
Okay. Well, Caroline, thank you so much for joining us. Again, her book is What Kind of Girl. You can purchase it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and it is available in the library for you to check out. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Have a good night.
You too. Take care.
All right. Bye.